All right, let's jump right in. When you think about school, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Is it textbooks? Maybe long lectures? Well, what if I told you that the real heart of learning isn't just what we learn, but how we learn it? Today, we're diving into learning activities, the experiences that really make knowledge stick.
Just listen to this. This is a primary school student named Nicola talking about a history project. And this quote, it just says it all, doesn't it? She was part of a learning activity so powerful, it didn't just teach her facts about the tutors, it made her feel like one. It literally changed her perspective. And that is what it's all about. So, here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll get on the same page with a few key definitions. Then, we'll explore the huge world of activities out there. After that, we'll see how educators actually pick the right ones and organize them for maximum impact. We'll even step into a real classroom to see it in action before we wrap things up.
Okay, so to really get why learning activities are so important, we have to see where they fit in the grand scheme of things. So let's quickly set the stage and define a few core ideas.
First up, curriculum. The easiest way to think about a curriculum is to see it as a map. It's the big plan, right? It lays out all the destinations, the goals and values, and the major routes you might take to get there.
So, if the curriculum is the map, then learning activities are the journey itself. They're the actual things you do to get from point A to point B. They're the experiences that bring that paper map to life.
And finally, you've got instruction. Think of this as the big umbrella term that covers the whole process of teaching. It includes, you guessed it, all those learning activities we're about to dive into. So now that we've got our foundation, let's get to the fun part.
So what kind of tools are we actually talking about here? What's in an educator's toolkit? Well, the short answer is a lot. And that's a good thing, because research is super clear on this. Variety is key. There's no single magic bullet strategy that works for every kid or every subject. We can basically sort all these different strategies into 6 main buckets. You've got your traditional lecture-style delivery, which is expository teaching. Then there's interactive teaching, think Q&As that get students talking. You have small group discussions for collaboration, and inquiry teaching, which is all about solving problems. Individualization lets students work at their own pace. And then there's one of my favorites, a really powerful one, models of reality. Yeah, let's zoom in on this one for a second. Models of reality are all about letting students play with simplified but still authentic versions of real-world stuff. This is where learning can get incredibly engaging. You can kind of think of these models on a spectrum. On the super high reality end, you've got things like flight simulators for pilots. I mean, it doesn't get much more real than that without leaving the ground. In the middle, you might have simulation games, like Monopoly, that model basic economics. And then on the more abstract end, you have role-playing, which is exactly what Nicola did when she became a tutor for a day. Okay, so you've got this huge menu of activities to choose from, which raises a really important question. How on earth does a teacher pick the best one for their students? Well, it's definitely not guesswork. It's actually a pretty methodical process. I mean, really, think about it. You want to teach a specific concept. Do you give a lecture? Do you set up a group project? Do you run a simulation? How do you possibly decide?
The best way to approach this is to think of it like a funnel. You start at the top with your main goal. What exactly do you want the students to learn? Then you filter that through the students themselves, their age, their abilities. Next, you have to get practical. What resources do you actually have? The time, the materials, the space. And finally, you consider any constraints like school policies. Whatever makes it all the way through the funnel, that's your activity. So you've used the funnel, you've picked out the perfect activities. Awesome. But here's the thing. Choosing what to do is really only half the battle. Now you have to figure out when to do it and in what order. You can't just toss a bunch of random activities at your students and hope for the best. This is where we build the blueprint. There are 3 big principles that guide this. First is continuity. You have to keep coming back to the big ideas over and over again. That's how they stick. Second is sequence. You want activities to build on each other, starting simple and getting more complex. A theorist named Hilda Taba had a great term for this, cumulative learning. And third is integration, which is all about connecting ideas across different subjects to create a richer, more unified web of knowledge.
Look, theory is great and all, but let's see what this actually looks like in practice. Let's check out a really cool example from a high school political science course.
So picture this, a class of high school seniors. The goal of the course is to give them a really deep, authentic understanding of how the U.S. political process works. Obviously, just reading a textbook isn't going to cut it.
So look at the mix of activities the teacher used. They ran a simulation where students created their own government, which gave them a hands-on feel for it. For real-world experience, they had students volunteer on actual political campaigns. They brought in local candidates for Q&As. They even integrated other subjects by analyzing political novels. And they used inquiry-based learning by having students investigate elections that were happening in real time.
And the result of all this? By carefully choosing and organizing this diverse set of activities, the teacher created this powerful, multi-layered experience. The students didn't just learn about politics. For a little while, they actually lived it. That's a world away from just reading a chapter in a book. All right, we have covered a ton of ground here, from the big picture theory all the way down to a real-world classroom. Let's boil it all down to the most important points you should take away.
So, here's what to remember. 1. Learning activities aren't just fluff. They are strategic tools to hit a goal. 2. There's no one-size-fits-all solution. Variety is your best friend. 3. Choosing the right activity is a deliberate filtering process. And 4. How you organize those activities, the sequence and the connections, is just as important as what they are.
Of course, none of this came out of thin air. This whole explainer is built on the shoulders of giants, some really brilliant thinkers in the world of education. For anyone who wants to go deeper, these are some of the key sources that really shaped how we think about all this stuff.
Let's end this right back where we started, thinking about Nicola. Her story is a powerful reminder that learning is about so much more than just facts and figures. The right activity at the right time can be absolutely life-changing. So I'll leave you with this to chew on. How might the right learning activity change not just what a student knows, but who they believe they can become?